We are going to have a look at the area of triangles. As you can see, we have got a right-angled triangle here, and we have got a height of 8 centimeters. This is called the height. And a base of 12 centimeters. This here is our base. Right, so our height and our base have to be perpendicular to one another. So because this is a right-angled triangle, we already have our right angle there, which helps us identify our perpendicular lines. So there are our perpendicular lines, so our height and our base are perpendicular to each other. Now we have a look at the formula for the area of a triangle. The area of a triangle is half base times height. Right, so let's just first have a look at this triangle. If we were to draw another triangle, pretty much exactly the same as this triangle, but just on top of it, we would see that we have a rectangle. So if we remember the formula for the area of a rectangle, that is length times breadth. So it's our length multiplied by our breadth, or our length multiplied by our breadth. So as you can see, that would work out quite nicely with our right-angled triangle. We could say length times breadth, and then we would get this entire area. And what we would then do is just divide it by 2, because we know that we have got 2 of these triangles inside our rectangle. So another way of working out the area of a right-angled triangle is to work out your base times your height. So it's base times height, which is equivalent to length times breadth in a rectangle, and then you divide it by 2. And you will end up with the same answer as if you use half base times height. So if we use area equals length times breadth and then divide that by 2, we will get the same answer as if we use half the base times the height. Right, so let's use both of these formulae. Using half base times height, we need to plug in our different numbers, or our different measurements. So we've got 12 centimeters is our base and 8 centimeters is our height. So half the base, which is 12, multiplied by our height, which is 8. So we end up with half of 12, which is 6, and 6 multiplied by 8 is 48. And because we are working with area, we are saying centimeters multiplied by centimeters, so we end up with centimeters squared. With area, your measurement will always be squared, remember. Right, so now let's have a look at our other formula for the area of a right-angled triangle. This formula you should only really use for the area of a right-angled triangle and not any triangle, and I'll explain why a bit later. So area equals length times breadth, so our length is equal to 12, because remember that these are equal in a rectangle, and our base is equal to 8 centimeters. So we could have length times breadth, which is 12 multiplied by 8, and we put that over 2, or we divide it by 2, and 12 multiplied by 8 is equal to 96. 96 over 2 is equal to 96 divided by 2, and 96 divided by 2 is equal to 48 centimeters squared, because again we were saying length times breadth, which was centimeters times centimeters. So we have centimeters squared, and as you can see, these answers are exactly the same. So I would recommend only using this formula for the area of any triangle, because for that reason you can use it for any triangle, whereas this formula here you can only really use for the area of a right angled triangle, and that is because we have perpendicular angles at our sides. So all our lines are perpendicular because we have right angles on all four angles of your rectangle. So let's try and get used to using this formula: half the base times the height. Obviously, if your height is easier to halve, so if your base is an odd number and your height is an even number, then you can halve your height and multiply it by your base. So try and remember this formula: half base times height for the area of a triangle. If we were asked to find the area of this triangle, what we need to do is first identify the height and identify the base, and then we need to remember our formula. So remember that the area of a triangle is equal to half the base multiplied by the height. So half the base times the height means that we need to find out what our base is and what our height is, and then plug those measurements in to get our answer. So remember that your base and your height have to be perpendicular to each other. So if we were given that this side over here was equal to 13 meters, that would not constitute our height. And the reason for that is because your height and your base have to be perpendicular. So there's your base, and the angle there is not a right angle. So this line here, this side there, and that side there are therefore not perpendicular to each other. So that is why our height is actually here in the middle of our triangle, because this looks like an isosceles triangle. So in an isosceles triangle, your height would be your line of symmetry, which is right down the middle. And the reason for that is because that line and your base form a right angle, which means that that line is therefore your height. So your height and your base are therefore perpendicular to each other. So we use 8 meters for our height and 15 meters for our base. So if we plug in our numbers, we've got half the base, and the base is equal to 15. And then we multiply our height, which is equal to not 13. It's equal to 8 meters, right? So now, as I said in the previous example, if your base is an odd number, so it's obviously more difficult to halve and get a whole number when you're halving it. So we could rather halve our height and then multiply our base. So we could change this around to say half of or multiplied by 8 and then multiply that by 15. So we end up with half multiplied by 8, or half of 8, which is equal to 4. And then we have 4 multiplied by 15, which is equal to 60. So we end up with an answer of 60 meters squared. And the reason we've got our squared measurements is because we were saying our height and our base multiplied together, which has meters to the power of 1 and meters to the power of 1, which ends up, if we say meters to the power of 1 times meters to the power of 1, we end up with meters squared. So the area of this triangle that has a height of 8 meters and a base of 15 meters will give us an answer of 60 meters squared. We are now going to have a look at the perimeter of triangles. So no matter what type of triangle we are working with, the formula for the perimeter of any triangle is equal to side plus side plus side. And that is because a triangle has 3 sides, and the perimeter of any shape is just adding all the sides together and figuring out what the outside bit will add up to. So if we would like to work out the perimeter of this triangle, we would add 17 and 9 and 11, and we would get an answer of 9 and 11 together give us 20, so we would get an answer of 37, and then millimeters plus millimeters plus millimeters will just give us millimeters, no millimeters squared. So when we're working with perimeter, remember we don't use any squared measurements. It's just the normal measurement to the power of 1, or just the normal measurement. So the perimeter of this triangle, which has sides 17, 9, and 11 millimeters, gives us an answer of 37 millimeters. If we are asked to find both the area and perimeter of this triangle, what we need to do is firstly remember the formulae. So the area of a triangle is half the base multiplied by the height, and the formula for the perimeter of any triangle is side plus side plus side. Right. What we then need to do is have a look at our triangle and see whether the measurements are all the same. So we can see that we've got 1 meter measurement there, where the other measurements are all in centimeters. So we need to convert our meters into centimeters by multiplying by 100, and we end up with 11 centimeters there. So we no longer need to worry about that 0.11 meters. We can rather work with 11 centimeters. Right, so when we are working with the area, we've got our formula down, which we should always write first, and then we work with just plugging in our measurements. So we've got half the base. What is the base? Our base, remember, and our height have to be perpendicular. So we see that there's our height, 9 centimeters, because it is perpendicular to our base, which is 16 centimeters. So our base is 16 and our height is 9. So half of 16 is equal to 8, and 8 multiplied by 9 is equal to 72. And because we are working with centimeters and centimeters by centimeters, we have an answer of centimeters squared. So the area of this triangle is equal to 72 centimeters squared. Right, let's have a look at our perimeter now. The perimeter of any triangle is simply adding all the sides, all 3 sides together. So we have got 17 centimeters plus 11 centimeters plus 16 centimeters. Right, and then just to be sure, we're going to do an addition on the side. And we end up with 8, 7 plus 1 is 8, 8 plus 6 is 14. And then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 ones, which is 4. So we end up with an answer of 44, and that measurement will be in centimeters. So the perimeter of this triangle is equal to 44 centimeters. If we were asked to find the area and perimeter of this triangle, we again just need to follow our formulae, and we just need to follow it slightly more carefully because now we are working with decimals, which is obviously slightly more difficult than working with whole numbers. So we've got half our base multiplied by our height, so we need to identify our base and our height. Because we are working with a right-angled triangle, we can see that our base is there and our height is there, and they are perpendicular to each other, so that's great. So 4.5 is our base, 3.6 is our height, but because 3.6 is even, 3.6 would be easier to halve than 4.5. So I'm actually going to swap these two around, and I'm going to say half of my height, which is 3.6, multiplied by my base, which is 4.5, and we will get the same answer. It will just help us with our working out. So half of 3.6 you should obviously do on the side, and that will give you an answer of 1.8. Then we've got 1.8 multiplied by our 4.5, and again do your working out on the side, and that will give us an answer of 8.1. And because we are multiplying meters together, we end up with meters squared. So the area of this triangle is equal to 8.1 meters squared. Right, so let's have a look at the perimeter of this triangle. The perimeter of any triangle is equal to side plus side plus side. So we just need to plug all our dimensions in. So we've got 7.1 plus 3.6 plus 4.5. So we do that on the side. We've got 7.1, 3.6, 4.5. We add those together and we end up with 1 plus 6 is 7. 7 plus 5 is 12. Bring down our decimal point. Carry our 1 over. 7 plus 3 is 10 and 11 and 15. So we end up with an answer of 15.2 meters. So the perimeter of this triangle is equal to 15.2 meters.